Item 1.4 is the public questions section, so I would like to invite, first of all, Mr. Michael Page to the table. Welcome, Mr. Page. We are very pleased to have some public questions. I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe you are the very first member of the public to address the combined authority with a question, and so on. And the floor is yours.
Well, it's a high honour. Thank you so much. You have the question in front of you. I will read it within 2 minutes. On 8 December, Mayor Palmer was reported in the Cambridge News as welcoming the consultant's report on the rapid mass transit options appraisal, declaring that he was, quote, very pleased with it. Various illustrations taken from the report were also included in the article. However, 7 weeks later, up to 5:30 p.m. on Friday the 26th, before this meeting, the report, which was omitted from Appendix 1, had still not been published on the website, nor had the consultant's brief in Appendix 2, for which an expenditure of £600,000 is proposed. So my question's in 4 parts. 1, if the Mayor was so pleased with the report, why did he not share it properly, in full, with the rest of us, instead of a premature release to the press? 2, are members of the board satisfied that they should be making important decisions today on this agenda item when key documents have not been made available in due time to the public? To do so would breach government guidelines on transparency, which state that no item can be considered if it, along with background papers, is not available for inspection by the public with 5 clear working days' notice. 3, do members of the board have an understanding of how the £600,000 figure has been arrived at, and that it represents best value? And finally, do board members believe that the process we have witnessed will gain public confidence in this new public body?
Thank you, Mr. Page. I'm going to answer them one by one, as you would expect. And the report was published on the Combined Authority website on the 26th of January. Of course, that's 5 days before this meeting. The decision that I made... excuse me, Mr. Page, I listened very carefully to your questions, and I hope you will listen very carefully to my answers. The decision that I made to report this to the public through the press was very clear and obvious, and the reason I did so was following. The GCP was putting forward public consultations on busways whilst this process was ongoing. I felt the public needed to be informed about the initial reports that came out, and they needed to understand that when I'd stood up in public before the election and since the election and said that I was against busways, I felt that they need to understand why and what other options were in front of us. That's why I went to the press. It was important that the public knew through the press what was going on. The reality is, it's now come before the board, and there's been 5 days since this was released. There's been 5 days since this was published. There is no breach of government guidelines. Legal advice has been given to this board on the ability to consider the consultant's report, and for each member to consider whether they can make a decision from the information available. And given the time they had to consider it, members had 5 calendar days to review the report, and like our scrutiny members, have received an earlier presentation from the consultants explaining their findings. Question 3, the decision before the members is not to approve the detail of the consultant's brief, and that is why we employ officers, but we have to agree whether we want to move to the next stage of the process. The figure quoted in the recommendation is an estimate based upon the officer expenditure. Officers have an obligation to secure value for money under a competitive process, and therefore the actual cost of the next stage is not actually known at this time, but will be lower than the budget we are approving. The actual cost of the contract will be made public through our future budget reports on the board. And the board accepts that the consultant's report was published some 3 days after the agenda, and I do apologise for that. Members have, however, seen the officer's report, which summarised all of the key items, and the report was published with the agenda and provided with a good understanding of more detailed consultant's report. As Mayor, I believe the public will gain confidence from seeing us deliver a transport system that will solve the problems that we are suffering in Cambridge today, let alone Cambridge. And we mustn't be just looking at Cambridge, because what we're suggesting is a solution not just for today, but for the whole of south of Cambridgeshire, not for today, but for the next 50, 60, 70 years. What we're talking about now is a complete transport solution. I am not going to get bogged down in process over this. This is about delivery. I made it very clear from day one in my campaign that I back tunnels and an underground system for Cambridge, and I still back a tunnels and underground system for Cambridge. And I will do everything I can as Mayor to make sure we deliver on a world-class public transport system. Cambridge is one of the leading cities in the world. It is a world city, and it absolutely should be leading the way in public transport as well. There has never been a solution to traffic problems in Cambridge. I've lived in this area for all of my life, and I remember being at college and being able to travel in from Milton to have my lunch on Jesus Green and travel out again in an hour. That sort of thing is just not possible anymore. If we are going to be bold and we're going to have the vision and the drive to deliver, we have to make sure that we push and push and push on this agenda. I'm convinced, Mr. Page, that you and I will face each other across the table many times over the next few years, and I welcome your input. Thank you.
I was informed I could have a supplementary.
Yes, okay, thank you.
You mentioned you're also concerned with process, and that came up quite a lot in recent days in the public domain on Twitter. And that was responded to by one of your fellow members who's here today. And quote, he said on Twitter, we'll build the innovative transport solutions, you check the paperwork, which is pretty much what you said, I guess. And then we've seen yourself appear on television making remarks about City Council and telling the public that the City Council are using the homeless as a political tool against the government. Now, I'm a member of the public. I'm rather concerned that the attitudes that we're seeing in these two areas, I mean, is this going to be the tone of what we get from here on with the combined authority? Is that what the public can expect from this combined authority going forward?
What the public can expect from this combined authority is delivery on its major projects.
I think that says it all. Thank you.
Mr. Carpen, would you like to come forward?
Thank you.
Sorry. Welcome, Mr. Carpen. I'm rather disappointed you didn't bring your dragon with you, but maybe another time. The floor is yours.
Oh dear.
You're not dressed in purple, do you?
No, not today, saving the dragon for another meeting. I was hoping that a representative from the consultants was going to be at this meeting, but obviously I'll address the points I have to the board. I've been I'm speaking on behalf just of myself here, and I've been on public record saying I fully back the Mayor 100% to deliver a light rail underground for Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire, and I still stand by that, in particular on the as envisaged by the Connect Cambridge model. So when I stumbled across the report, I thought the consultants let down all of you in the quality of that report, given the budget that they had. In particular, I did not see in the report anything on the history of how previous public transport and traffic mitigation schemes have worked, including this wonderful book which has just been published. I didn't see any forward projections in relation to tourism in terms of previous studies done on tourism, what the current levels of tourists are, and what those projections are likely to be in the next 30 to 50 years. So really my point is with this report is it's incomplete, similar to the critique given by the Smart Cambridge Transport campaign, whose petition I've put up online at their request, which has had 289 signatures at the last count in just over 24 hours. So my point is that actually the SDG group should really either withdraw the report or issue a supplementary document to you, Mr. Mayor, and to this board to enable you to make a more informed decision, because the risk may well be that we go down a route where we just have an extended guided bus style transport scheme with tunnels, rather than this wonderful light rail scheme that I was led to believe we were going to get. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Carpen. Can I just want to set out what the report did. The report studied the options between different transport solutions. And the report has recommended a brand new system that I didn't know was in existence a few months ago. You're right, I mentioned light rail as a particular option, and until I saw this option, I believed it probably was the right way. However, I did also say I'm not married to light rail, and if there is a better way and a more efficient way of delivering the system, then we should look at it. Now, please don't be under the misunderstanding that we asked the people to put together a high-level report considering routes, considering future traffic flows, considering growth, tourism, all these things. There are other studies ongoing that we're working on, and I'm sure that the routes that we choose and the future study that we look at, the next study, will get down in the detail of exactly what you're saying here. What do I want to see from this? I want to see a world-class transport system delivering people in their many hundreds via a tram system that goes under the city of Cambridge. This system will be on dedicated routes. It will not be a busway. It will not be a guided bus or anything like it. Just because there are wheels on a tram doesn't mean it's a bus. Otherwise, the metro system in Paris would be a bus and we know it's a train. So I understand what you're saying. I really get what you're saying, but believe me, the detail will come in the future.
Okay, thank you. And really, again, just to urge you to ask the consultants when they go back again to really look at the history and the lessons learned of previous schemes and why they didn't go through, because I've been going through this myself in the archives downstairs, amongst other things, and there are some really useful lessons learned from schemes, even going back as far away as the old Cambridge tram that we used to have, and the plans to electrify that tram that didn't go through. Ditto with the previous tourism studies done by the County Council here and by the City Council. I think there is, as you go forward, I think those previous studies, and in terms of how accurate they ended up being with their predictions, will be very, very useful to you. So I'd recommend that your officials and those who are advising really study those and ensure that you can make decisions informed of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpen.